Hello and welcome to The Halfway Point. I'm Ben Scorer with the Locum Practice Manager, who supports GP practices with practical operational leadership, consultancy and locum management expertise. Because we work across multiple practices and systems, we see patterns, challenges and solutions emerging in real time, and this podcast brings those insights to you. By the halfway point of the week, you've already made dozens of decisions and probably solved problems nobody else has even noticed. The Halfway Point is here to support you at exactly that moment, with honest conversations and practical insight to help you lead with clarity and confidence for the rest of the week. Today we are talking about new and different ways to help you and your teams manage your day-to-day workload. I'm pleased to be joined by Tracy Dell, who is one of the directors and founders of Locum Practice Managers. So Tracy, you worked across a wide range of NHS primary care settings, including locum roles. What first drew you into general practice and what's kept you there?
I think like everybody, Ben, I think I'm an accidental practice manager. I don't know anybody that, said when I grow up I want to be a practice manager or business manager or PCN manager or ops manager or anything like that. I think I was already working in health and I'd worked in a mainly sort of senior admin role, drifted into management by taking on more and more areas of work and sort of enhancing my responsibilities. I've always been drawn to health. I've always wanted to work in a job that deals with people and not things and objects. And having worked in different parts of the NHS, I'm NHS through and through, but I've worked in community sector, secondary care, the voluntary sector as a healthcare manager, and then in primary care for most of that time. And I've kept the most challenging job I've ever done, but the most rewarding job I've ever done. And that's what keeps me going, I think.
Say the best till last.
Yeah.
When you were locum in different practices, what patterns did you start to notice about how the practices were being managed?
I started working differently as a practice manager, I think, working with what was then the Primary Care Trust, the integrated care boards, the clinical commissioning groups as was, but also like the local medical committees. I've always been a bit of a champion for practice management development, and that's always given me a little bit of time away from my practice. But I've brought really good things back to the practice when I've been doing this work. Then I did sort of, go fully self-employed and everything over the last 5 years as a locum practice manager because I'd done my time, I'd got the practice where it needed to be, and I wanted to start doing things. So I started to go into other practices. And I think the minute we come out of our own practice and start not just talking to other practice managers, but actually physically being in another practice, I very quickly realised we all deliver the same contracts or very similar contracts, apart from the local ones that change slightly. But we all do it in a different way. We've all got different patient populations. We've all got different workforce configuration. And so the trends and patterns that I've experienced over these last 5 years are from the length and breadth of the, Great Britain and right up as far up as Glasgow and as far down as Kent. And, kind of doing conferences in, your neck of the woods down on the south.
Yeah.
Thing. So I think that's when I started to realise there's something in this. I'm starting to see we've all got similar problems, not exactly the same, but there's some absolute key themes running through that around efficiencies and saving time. And those are the important areas I think that practice managers need help with and practices and partners. Yeah.
And I think is that kind of then kind of summarising that, is that kind of where you realised there was a need for something like LPM?
Yeah, and then a conversation after a best practice conference. This is more than just me as a single-handed locum practice manager. It's a very lonely job being a locum practice manager as it is being a practice manager. And then I realised that some practices need different types of help based on their circumstances. And that's kind of everything from short sort of project target-driven work to medium-term work whilst we're recruiting another practice manager or reassessing the workforce team, even the whole practice management team, for example, or long-term. We've worked in so many different ways with LPM in different settings. And that's when I realised there's something in this and there needs to be more than just a few of us doing this independently. Let's get together and form this community of locum managers with all this massive amount of expertise, which we have across even just in our directorship across the regions, we have over 150 years of practice management experience.
Yeah.
You don't get that with one person. You don't get that with one team. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because it's where where practice management has evolved over the years, there's almost like a leadership trap now where you're kind of expected to do everything yourself. But actually, as you've just pointed out, if you do it collectively as a group of people, having, 4 or 5 heads on a project with 150 years experience is far greater than one, even with acknowledging all of their years experience. So why do you feel some managers cannot delegate or share responsibility, even if they've got capable teams around them?
I think it's really hard to let go. And I wouldn't exactly say we're all control freaks, but we like to be in control. And I think there's a difference there. Wanting and liking being in control is making sure you're doing the job properly. And I think we take on that responsibility as practice managers. We're a bit unique, aren't we? Because in any other sort of corporate organisation, we'd be a CEO. We wouldn't be manager, we wouldn't be the practice manager. We hold so much responsibility. And I think because we drive such high quality and we've got such high standards because of the role that we deliver, and it's such a wide-ranging role as well, isn't it? Covering all domains of different types of management. I think what we tend to do is we tend to feel responsible and hold on. And you've got to delegate with confidence as well. And we don't always have confidence in our teams. Not that we're kind of being patronising that no one can do it any better than us or no one can do it as good as good as we can. But I do think it has to be delegate with confidence, and that takes a bit of effort. And I don't think we've always got the time, the free time to do that.
Yeah,
that's the problem, I think.
Yeah, it's easy to say invest the time in, and then you'll get the rewards out. But finding even half an hour or an hour sometimes can be hard to do whilst firefighting everything else.
That's right. Yeah, I think firefighting's the best. Yeah, we tend to firefight. We tend to do much less in a planned and prepared way. We do tend to deal with things as they happen, as they arrive, and then we have our, smaller percentage of planned work that that we work towards, I suppose.
So, in your experience, then, what happens, or what actually happens to practice when too much responsibility sits with one person?
I mean, it just results in burnout. I mean, we don't always admit burnout either. We'll carry on until we completely fizzle out. And I think we're seeing this more and more, certainly in our communities of practice managers, whether that's locums or practice managers. And I say practice management rather than practice manager now, because obviously we've got such a wide range of roles in management roles in primary care now and in general practice. And I do think, we don't take our wellbeing seriously enough. We have started to see that, improve over the years, and it took a cough indicator to sort of make everybody wake up and realize what to do. A cough indicator for wellbeing and some points attached to it kind of helped a little bit. But I do think we're not very good, at looking after our own wellbeing. And it will result in burnout, but it also results in failure. And that's not a personal failure. That's a failure to be supported. It's a failure to be recognised that you're struggling. And then we miss things, and then things go wrong. And part of the reason why LPM are so busy is because that's what's happening. And we're going in and helping to support and fix things and get people back on track. But it's got to be, it's not sustainable to keep doing that. We've got to look at the problem and we've got to fix that, haven't we?
Yeah, and it's hard as well, because even from a personal level, you take pride in your work. So when it fails, and whether that's through an audit or a CQC or something like that, you can't help but take it personally. But you are one member in what some practices are 50, 100, 150 staff. So you are a very important person in the role, but you've got to look after yourself. So when going into a new practice, how do you begin to identify the strengths and weaknesses within the team? What's a good way of picking up on that?
It's great when we're invited into support practices for one piece of work, for example, Ben, because we always make our observations. And I think as a locum, we automatically capture all of that other evidence that's going on around us. And let's be fair, if we haven't got a good team, we can't deliver. We just can't deliver anything if we've not got that team. And the first thing you do as a locum in a practice is you assess the team dynamics. You look at how everything connects. You look at how everything's coordinated. So I think it's about gathering that intel, isn't it, from the team and finding out what works. And again, because I'm objective, I go into a practice with fresh eyes. It's easy to see things when you're not on it all the time. And I quickly we use a framework in LPM, and we can assess our findings, and we can look at, is the right person doing the right thing? Is there potential? Is there a shining star that's not being noticed? Are we doing things the same way because we've always done it that way for years and years? And are we listening, and are we open to suggestions from people? I think if we don't open the kind of communication channels so people can come in and suggest things and feel confident to do that, you don't have to be a manager to change things in a practice. Anyone that's doing anything in the practice should have a voice and should be able to, speak up. And even if I've heard it before, we've probably, in the years we've been doing this, probably go, yeah, we've tried that, it doesn't work. You know what? Let's try it again. It might be different this time,
Yeah.
But I think that's the key, listening and communicating and making it okay to come up with an idea, and accepting it.
Yeah. And sometimes we've tried it before, it didn't work, might not necessarily be a result of the practice. The guidance, the NHS, the support, the digital systems, even since COVID, have evolved. So a lot of practices trying something, they might say, oh, we tried that in, 2018, 2019. Try it again. Yeah. It's a different area now. Go for it. Give it another try. So what do you think, a little bit of homework for everyone then, what's a good way, or what practical steps can a practice manager take this week to start using their team's strengths more effectively? What would you recommend?
I think the first thing I'd do is look at how you communicate with each other. We operate in such a wide range of operating hours, don't we? Core hours, 6:30, Monday to Friday. We sometimes don't see each other, from one day to the next. So we have to have different communication channels for a start. And I would just test that theory. If you want to, we've got loads of ways of communicating in practice, and most of it is like IT. But do we actually now rely too much on that? Do we send an instant message to someone in the other room when we actually could either pick the phone up and have a verbal conversation with them, extension, or could we just actually go into that room and conversation?
Heaven forbid,
fancy that. We can actually start talking to people. So for me, my suggestion would be that in order to even make any improvements around delegation, you need to have a conversation and communicate first. And then what kind of meetings do you have? Do you make those meetings, do they all connect? We have multiple meetings in practice, but do they actually connect with each other? And delegating, you're never going to know if you've got confidence in handing something over to someone unless you give them a go. And do you know what? If you give something to somebody and you're still overseeing it, what can go wrong? If it goes wrong, you try something else. You try it again.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard when everybody's busy in the practice. We're all busy, but you can't give someone more work without them letting something go or creating an efficiency in the system that reduces the time taken to do that. So perfect example is, when you're dealing with calls, and we've now got all our super duper call systems that can sort of track the busy times and the quieter times in the day, we can sort of then start to shape some of that other work that goes on around those times when we've got lots of other calls coming through. Everyone jumps in and everyone answers the phone at certain busy periods of the day. I've just had this conversation with our PCN manager around, our capacity and access improvement program and plan. And I've had this conversation with them about that. But let's push it the other way. So what about those, dare I say, there's no such thing as queue in general practice, but what about those times when things are less busy? Maybe we can start to sort of test some of these theories then, and maybe put some systems in place that kind of automate lots more things so that we can let go straight away with those things. We're quite confident now with IT, aren't we? We're getting a lot braver now with the IT. So maybe having a look at that. But absolutely find out and test that theory. First of all, how do you get to the point of even having a conversation about delegation before you actually do it? And be brave. I think you just got to be brave, to do it.
You don't know what you don't know, almost. You don't know what the team are capable of. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, but we're just going to mention in the break something that really proud that we got off the ground, the new practice managers conferences that LPM started last year and continued this year. So just going to play you some more info about that now. Following the success of LPM's very first new to practice manager conference, we are bringing them back with dates right across the country. This year, we're heading to Hull, Salisbury, Newcastle and Preston. And the best part, it is completely free to attend. If you're new to the practice manager role and feeling like everyone else has the manual except you are not alone. These conferences are relaxed, practical and honest. Real conversations, useful learning and tools you can take straight back to your practice. You'll also meet trusted industry partners, leaders in their own field who are there to support you and help you grow with confidence. You will leave clearer, better connected and ready to lead. Head to locumpm.co.uk to book your free place and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook to stay up to date. We would love to see you there. So looking at the conferences there, Tracy, what do you think worked really well with the first one last year, and what are you excited about for the new PM conferences planned for this year?
I think it's really about this being unique. You know, new practice managers being invited to their own conference gives them that arena and that networking opportunity to be around like-minded people and feel quite safe, I think. You know, there's lots of managers out there and there's lots of conferences out there for primary care managers and GP practice managers as well. But I think having one specifically for people that have got less than 3 years experience or are coming into primary care or general practice from a different arena creates a bit of a safe environment, I think, for people. I think the networking opportunities are amazing, but I think just steering that agenda to all the things that matter to practice managers. And we've got I keep saying the 5 key things. So HR, finance, contracting, patient services, and compliance, governance. I think those are all the key areas. And I think we're just going to give these bite-sized opportunities to be able to talk to the specialists in the room. We've brought our trusted providers into the room, our trusted suppliers into the room. And we've also got the opportunity for them to talk amongst themselves. And there's a lot of networking time in that day as well to share ideas. But generally, I think it's just about getting the people out of practice, giving them some headspace away from that day job, just to have a little bit of time to focus on some of the key areas that they need help with and support, and to sort of, I don't know, instill a bit of confidence and make them a little bit better about, you know, where they're at, because it's very daunting, isn't it, being a new manager? And I say up to 3 years, I still felt like a new manager much longer than that, to be honest, coming in from a completely different environment into general practice. It's really, really scary. And if you've not got a really good, strong peer network group around you, the role's very lonely for someone who knows what they're doing and very experienced. So I can only imagine what that feels like for someone coming in who doesn't know what to expect in general practice and in that role. So yeah, really exciting. And I think the feedback that we had from the first conference encouraged us to do this a bit more and make it more accessible to people in other parts of the country as well. I think you're bang on there. Those 5 areas you listed, they're huge, daunting topics in their own right. And you know, sometimes you get a handover with the role, and even then, you then sit in the big red chair on day one on your own and go, "Oh, I've forgotten everything." Sometimes you don't even get a handover. You know, these things things happen. Common. Yeah, there's more and more now, I think. Yeah, you just in and there's been a gap and you're filling it, and that's it. Yeah, and all of a sudden you're in. So having a space for new PM. So we'd really encourage you to come along and share the day with us, and I hope you can pick up on that. So looking back on kind of what we're talking about today, so and that kind of flows in quite nicely to look at kind of when is it okay to bring in outside support, really, do you think, to a practice? So kind of outsourcing either some of the work or some of the responsibilities. How do you feel about that? I think it's always a bit of a dirty word, isn't it, in general practice? We kind of want to do everything ourselves, don't we? Yeah. We want to do it our way, and we want it to be like bespoke to us in our practice. Yeah. We are as LPM now outsource. We are an outsource option, aren't we? Very true. Working really well in different practices and different organisations. It's working really well to deal with small areas of work or to actually provide a management service on a long-term basis, which we've done many times now, which is great. We all got used to, we didn't at first, but we all got used to payroll and pension administration and outsourcing that, didn't we? No. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. I'd say there's quite a lot of people now doing that. I mean, a lot of managers still like to do it in-house, and they still like to do software, the various types of software, from Iris to whatever other pieces of software, Sage maybe, that we're using for it. Yep. I think everyone's got used to that idea, but now we're seeing bookkeeping being outsourced. We're seeing our correspondence manager, our workflow being outsourced. LPM provide an outsourcing service for handling complaints. We don't have to be in the practice to do that. We can still do that as well. I think we've got to start opening up our minds a little bit more and being a little bit more open to looking at the sort of areas of work that we feel as our, I don't know, even our bread and butter stuff, there's some great innovations out there, and there's some really good trusted providers out there that certainly LPM have worked with across multiple practices. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Making sure that you've done your homework, making sure you've researched who you're going to outsource to. And obviously LPM are a great source for, helping you with that as well. We don't just deliver the services, but we have all of these other services that we've used ourselves that we can absolutely validate and vouch for, that are tailored to support general practice, those specialists, if you like. Usually accountants are the automatic thing that you can outsource, but maybe other elements of that, like keeping, processing invoices. Accountants are now providing services on that. A bit like you do with your payroll, they'll process your invoices twice a month for you, and they'll reconcile everything for you. So I think we've got to get a little bit more sort of open-minded about outsourcing, not see it as letting go of anything or as a failure, but see it as an enhancement to be able to free us up to come up with more ideas around supporting our teams, generating more income, reducing expenditure, running more efficient organisations. Gives us as managers a little bit of free time to do that if we don't have to do every single thing, and we take advantage of outsourcing some of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think about the payroll. I know one of the providers, just from personal experience, when we knocked on their door to kind of look up for it, they had a 2-year waiting list.
Yeah.
So kind of, I guess from that, it's saying, almost starting to look at 1, 2, 5 years ahead, and go, especially if you're thinking of retiring, or you're looking, there might be a merger or a change structure coming. It's worth having these conversations with these companies now, because if there is a waiting list, you don't want to join the waiting list at the end of a 2-year period. You want to get there at the beginning.
That's right.
So the time you then merge, they're ready to take you on.
Yeah, and you don't have to take up the offer if you're on the waiting list and you get
true.
You can say, well, no, maybe in another 6 months' time, we'll pause it and they'll move down the line. But once you're on the waiting list, you've got an option to start thinking it. And LPM certainly have some information about that if people need that as well.
Yeah. And I think that especially with the digital side of things, it's so much easier to do. We're just talking about the bookkeeping and stuff like that. That can be remotely done, and we're all on the same cloud-based accounting packages. You log on and the invoices from last week are already there. Whereas that would be the time scanning it or uploading it. It's time back that we might not have, and especially the large practices, or even the dispensary type practices, when you're getting all hundreds of invoices in a month, that all adds up really quickly. And I think, so just expanding on that kind of, is there ways we can use third-party suppliers as well? So kind of looking more at kind of like buying groups and those kind of areas. Is there other ways that we can expand it so that we can get the best deals and, save some money at the practice?
Yeah, I mean, we've done this through LPM, and I've done this individually in practice as well, where you have to get your suppliers working for you, not the other way around. So getting them to sort of streamline your invoices. I know, certainly the likes of Dean Healthcare and a few other medical suppliers will actually streamline your invoices. They'll create standing orders for you, regular orders. They'll put things into your favourites for you. And I know this all sounds like a couple of minutes of saving time. They'll help you if you do like, kind of create a monthly stock check, which you can do in the clinical systems now as well. And it links in really nicely.
True, yeah.
Minimum stock levels and things like that. So I think we've got to get our suppliers working for us, and we've got to go back to them, with price matching. I don't want to have to go to another supplier and then go back to that supplier and say, actually, I can get this cheaper from so-and-so. I know at the back of my mind, I don't want to be processing multiple invoices, placing multiple orders with different companies, just to shave a few pounds off.
A couple of pennies,
cost of couch rolls. But what I want to do is to have that provider that if I just go onto the chat, or I just drop them an email and say, can you review the prices on this? I want them to do that for me. I don't want to be doing that. And I think we've got a lot of buying power now, PCN level, practice level, and across, organisations. LPM probably get the best pricing from those trusted providers because we are, we're confident.
True.
And we are, so I think it's about being a bit assertive, making sure that they're the right fit for you. And if they're not delivering things, you need to check that. And historically, like with accountants, we'll stay with accountants for years and years and years.
Yeah.
There's an updated service level agreement. we won't actually be holding them to account for it. We won't actually be making them work for it. And we don't question when they put the prices up just because of inflation. But we should be reviewing things, more frequently. But if we can automate a few other things and outsource a few other things, that might give us them a few extra.
Give us the time back
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So just going back to kind of like the theme of today, how some managers may worry that bringing in outside companies might look like failure. So how would you kind of respond or help alleviate those feelings? What do you reckon?
I think that's sad, but that's true. I think that's very true.
Yeah.
You feel like, if you go to the partners and say, I'd like to outsource bookkeeping, why can't you do it? Or don't you have time to do it? Or don't you? But I think what we've got to do is we've got to be really clear about what we will do instead if we're not doing that. So you go with the questions already answered, don't you? And then that gives you the confidence, because you actually then remind yourself, well, actually, I want to sort the workforce out. I want to make sure we're maximising the use of our clinical teams. I've noticed the clinical team are doing extra admin. I've noticed that we're perhaps not getting the appointments right. I noticed we're not utilising our pharmacy first referrals. Things like that. I would go to partners with a little bit of a summary of why you want to do it, because then you'll remind yourself why you're doing it. It's not because you haven't got time. It's not because you're not capable. It's not that you're not skilled enough to do that. It's just not a good use of your time. Your time can be spent doing other things. And then you also then get your opportunity to sort of give your role a little bit of, a bit of a difference and bring something else in to sort of keep you, to keep you from not doing the same thing all the time.
True.
We become automated as practice managers if we keep doing things that we don't need to do,
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah.
It's not a failure. I think remind yourself of why it's not a failure and what the benefits are of outsourcing, rather than, don't see it as an option because you've got nothing else, but because you've absolutely got other ideas of how you want to spend your time instead of doing that. And we're not specialists. We'd have to do training, annual updates on payroll and pension, for example, if we wanted to carry on processing.
Yeah.
We have to keep up to date with all the new flexible retirement.
It's getting harder and harder.
It is getting harder and harder to do that. And having the time to do the training, add that in as well, and take that off your outsourcing costs, because that is a cost,
Yeah, that's very true as well. So just wrapping up then. So if a practice manager listening feels overwhelmed right now, what one thing should they stop doing? And then equally, what one thing do you think they should start doing?
I think for me, time is the most precious resource in our roles at the moment. We don't actually have enough time. We never will have enough time. I think we've got to make the time. And I think we've got to give ourselves permission to be able to just have some time at least once a week where you just do something that's proactive. You do something that's planning, you do something that's thinking ahead. And I think you just have to give yourself permission to do that. Lock the door. I have to lock myself in sometimes. Either with a sign on the door, do not disturb, or whatever. You can try to trade. I'm doing payroll and doing everything else. You can do all of that, but I think you need to give yourself that time. Often not, we run in, and before we even get to our desk, we've got 20,000 jobs, but, just getting to your desk and sitting down before you've even made the drink and taken your coat off. I think just give yourself a little bit of time, grant yourself 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, and promise yourself that I'm going to do something that's not firefighting just for that 15 minutes. I'm going to do something that's going to make a difference to me and make a difference to the team and to the patients that we serve, and give yourself the time to think of an idea and just plot it and just put it into action. And it doesn't always take long, does it, to do that? So 15 minutes of non-firefighting would be my tip.
I love that. Grant yourself the time. That's really good. So thank you, Tracy, for joining us today and sharing such valuable insight. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you follow or subscribe so you don't miss next Wednesday's release. And if this episode helped you, please let us know in the comments below as well. If you think this episode would help a colleague, please also share it with them. You can connect with us LPM on LinkedIn and Facebook. Just search for Locum Practice Manager. Hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next time at the halfway point.
Thanks, Ben. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.